Welcome to Beyond the Dragon, where we explore indie tabletop role-playing games and their design, to inspire you to play them, or take what you like for your own creations. Hi there, my name's Oscar C. Tango.
And my name's Sun.
We're both tabletop game designers and professional game masters who love tabletop RPGs. Today we will be discussing Trophy Dark. Trophy Dark originally came out in Codex Dark 2 in December of 2018. This is not the version we are going to be discussing. We are instead going to be discussing a further fleshed out and something of a reprint of that known as Trophy Dark, available for purchase on DriveThruRPG as of July 12th, 2022. Trophy is a play-to-lose game and a horror game written by Gauntlet Games, clocking in at a total of 183 pages, of which we'll be discussing about 40. We'll get to that in a moment. The game has you play as a treasure hunter on a doomed expedition. Or, well, you personally. As a team, you're playing as a team of treasure hunters. The only result of your travels is your inevitable demise. Even if you escape, you will only feel what attacked you. You will only feed what attacked you fresh blood later on. Now, so the reason we're only discussing about 40-ish of the pages of Trophy is because a good portion of Trophy Dark's actual book content are what are called incursions, pre-published modules that all focus on a theme and provide you what you need to run them. So we aren't going to be individually doing those, we're just going to talk about the actual gameplay stuff. So if we don't review your favorite incursion in the core book, we didn't review anybody's, so at least it's fair. Main engine-wise, as main engines go, this one is an interesting fusion of a few things we've looked at here before. It's a d6 dice pool game, with a number of potential dice, but on average, the most you're probably going to be taking is 3. There are 2 potential dice known as light dice, and 1 potential dark die, quote-unquote. This is a game that encourages multicolored die, so that you can easily track them. You can gain a light die from using a skill that you have, or taking something called a Devil's Bargain, an unavoidable consequence, whether or not you succeed or fail on your roll, that grants you an additional light die. Dark die are gained when you do something that risks your mind or your body, like casting a spell called a ritual. If your dark die is your highest die, you take a condition, mark this game's replacement for HP, known as Ruin, and then treat it as a normal roll. Also, just for fun, you can re-roll if you don't like your result, adding a dark die for each re-roll. You re-roll until you are happy or until your dark die is the highest die you rolled. Tied light and dark die will count dark as the highest. This is one of the more intricate core engines we've looked at so far. In terms of determining success, it's a bit more familiar. A 1 to 3 is a failure, a 4 to 5 is success with a consequence, and a 6 is an outright success. Your highest die is the only one that counts, so no adding them together. These in general rolls are known as risk rolls. So whenever you are making a risk roll, you say what you want to do, and the GM or the players will potentially say what could go wrong. This means that your fellow players could potentially be the thing that caused you to suffer oh so horribly. After you roll and read the highest die, if you haven't risked your mind or body, you can change your mind after, when you reroll, to add that dark die. Son, what do you think of Trophy?
I really enjoy Trophy Dark, at least. I really enjoy it. It's a very fun way to make these group of characters spiraling as they try and get deeper and deeper to their goal of treasure. And then at the end, probably you're all dead or you're all scarred characters. This one shot, leaving you forever changed. I really like it, and it's simplicity really in all the rules. Based on the fact that there's 40 pages of roughly just rules-based content, I would have thought there was a lot more, but really it's just front-loaded with make a very simple character And here's like the 5 different types of rolls you can do. But they're all, a d6 roll, and they're just used for different contexts. I really like Trophy, and I will definitely be using it for any horror-based games, and even some of these little one-shots. Even in the book, it says, don't be afraid to expand it out a little bit more. Do a 2-shot or 3. You don't have to rush it. And I love how it's emphasized so much in this book. This is a collaborative horror role-playing game. Very collaborative. The players are not just sitting there getting the GM telling them what's happening and giving them things to react off. The players are encouraged a lot to describe the world as well, and especially after they die as well. There's a kind of an option there to say, let the players to be like a co-GM, or when they die, describe, let the players become like a force of evil. I really like that. It evokes the sitting around a campfire type of feeling.
Mm.
And I would definitely play this around a campfire if I ever went outside.
And if you could, get something to keep your dice clean.
Nah. You just throw them into the fire. It's fine.
Yeah, burn the math rocks. Well then,
Yeah.
I mean, how about a couple of supporting mechanics? You can feel free to start.
So, we have the basic risk roll that you'll all be doing. I really like the devil's... No, not the devil's bargain. Yes, the devil's bargains. Risk roll. Anytime you get into a situation where it's risky, you state what happens, or what you hope happens, and then the GM and the PC can say what can possibly go wrong. You can, if you want to increase your chances, players around the table, the GM can, come up with, situations that, hey, what are you going to take this bargain on? And the players or the PC can, pick and choose from from the group, giving them knives to stab themselves with. Be like, yeah, I'll take that, sure. And then they can take their die, and now this is a complication that will definitely happen no matter what the situation. It's an as the entire game is, it's an opt-in knife that you're using to stab yourself with. It's an opt-in destroy your character a little bit more. And I think this is a neat way to tie it into the central rolling mechanic that you'll be doing the entire time.
Agreed.
I really like that.
Yeah, especially since you can always say no or even try to change the deal a little bit by suggesting alterations.
Yes, and that adds in the little devil bit to it. It is a bargain. It's like, I like that idea, but let's twist it a little bit. It's part of that collaborative, oh, I like that, but let's try and twist it a bit. The co-GMing coming out from all the players.
Indeed.
You're all basically providing interesting ways to make each of your characters go out with a bang.
On my end, I actually, there's one thing this game does very well. I've seen a couple of versions of it recently in books I've been reading. Safety tools. Now, for those not aware of how TTRPG's safety tools work, there's a number of different methods, all of which have their own merits, and you can run as many of them as you like, or hypothetically as few. But in this game, it's a horror game. It states this right out. And we haven't discussed safety tools on this podcast yet, despite the fact that me and Son are both huge fans of horror games, like Shadow of the Demon Lord. And it's really good to see a game that doesn't just say, here's a link, like a hyperlink or a website link, where you can look up safety tools and you should use those. It has the safety tools written out explicitly in the game, how they work. And then it says you can find, we use these alternatives for these reasons, but you can find information about the alternatives, and then it does give a link. And
Yes. Yeah.
that, I mean, it might not necessarily be one of those things that directly supports the theme of the game like what we normally try to put here, but it's one of those things that doesn't just, that supports the fact that it's a game. This isn't a horror story that's happening to you. It's a fun game where you're all having a horrible time. And that's really important. And I think that really highlights the fact that even if it, this is a game where you're going to die horribly. Even if you make it out, you're going to have lost probably more than just a few limbs and your humanity. So, as something that sits down and says, but hey, remember, keep it fun, keep it safe for everyone. It's a game is a good feature to have.
No, I definitely agree. I love the emphasis and clear statement of safety tools in this, and it just goes back to the collaborative nature of like we're all here to play the game, and there's mentions of consent even in like the PvP aspects of the game and the like, setting up guidelines so you can all have that safe horrific adventure. and with the safety tools thing, I'll make mention that all the incursions at the top of it, after the title, like it actually mentions some content warnings. So a nice brief way for the players and the GM to be like, oh, actually, maybe we won't use this, or proceed with caution if someone's like, I don't think I want child harm with this incursion. Okay, we'll skip this one. I love its strong-fisted mention of safety tools.
And just because we haven't mentioned any safety tools, the safety tool method used here is called fast forward, pause, rewind.
Script change specifically.
Yes, that's the full method. It basically, whenever players are comfortable, they're allowed to say pause if they need a break or to discuss what's happening. Rewind, so if something came up in a scene that crossed a line that someone didn't mention or just made someone uncomfortable, you can roll it back and change it. And then fast forward, if you need to skip certain kinds of content, you can.
Yes, and you can look up on Google, script change by Bo Sheldon. Provides a much more detailed explanation than just the simplified version that Trophy does provide.
Or that I just provided Trophy's version.
Oh, yes, but like there's even more detailed, even more remote control based language for extra things. So if you really like this type of safety tool, there's even more just on the website.
All right, what about you? What is your next supporting feature?
So you mentioned safety tools. I was going to bring that up later, but actually I think that is a good point to mention in supporting the horror aspect of this game. Briefly, the reduction roll. So, as your characters continue to delve deeper and deeper into this horrific environment, typically by default, the forest, you will start to incur ruin, which is a collective harm, insanity. You're losing yourself. That's just your general health, if you want to put it. You start with 1 ruin, and once you get to 6 ruin, you lose yourself. You run off into the forest, you die, you become one of the terrors of the forest. But when you get to 5 ruin, you may now choose to try and reduce it by acting in the forest's interests. Destroy some treasure, prevent the use of your own party's rituals, maybe sabotage your fellow treasure hunters' exit from the forest. Each time you act in the forest's interest, roll one of your light die. If you roll less than your current ruin, which would be typically a 5, then your act goes unnoticed and you remove one ruin. If you roll higher or equal to your current ruin, you have to decide whether you want to remove one ruin. And if you do, someone notices your attempted betrayal. I like this way of mechanizing your trying to, not lose yourself. But to do that, you're going to have to push on the danger to your fellow party. This is one of the PvP mechanics. And I like how it just straight up says, hey, if you roll less, roll greatly, it just goes unnoticed. And if you roll high enough, then you can start to bring in the where the players probably start maybe fisticuffing or ditching you. I really like the reduction roll. It's a risk reward type of thing, and another way for the knives to start being brought out.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
I mean, this one becomes a little bit weird. Players always have the ability to veto anything that might affect their character in a negative way. This is something that actively encourages you to fuck over the party. It's one of those things where I'm not sure how veto comes in with this, but otherwise, the idea that serve the forest and it will reward you isn't a bad idea. On the flip side, part of me wonders, wouldn't that make you a little bit more ruined already? Considering how losing yourself works?
So, ruin is the forest basically taking back, taking back what's been stolen from them, and in this case, it's your own power, blood, and everything. And the fact that you're helping the forest out, it's like, okay, fair enough. You're aiding me. You're providing a sense of peace to me. You won't be. I won't draw as much power from you. But yes, you do bring up the veto thing, and it does make mention that yes, players should. This is a collaborative thing, and if you do fuck over the players, it does need to be a yes/no type of situation. You can't just actively kill someone without them saying that's fine, it's okay. But yeah.
But no. I mean, I like the mechanic. I like the idea of trophy overall, and everything trophy does with, like, starting out as a group and becoming more paranoid and turning against each other, especially with both a mixture of the forest and then ruined players messing with each other. I think it's beautiful. This is something that if you get a party that's just like, no PvP, could feel a bit flat. But I like it otherwise, and I agree that consent is important for something like this, so I can't bash it for being careful or safe. It seems like it could be very group dependent.
That's fair enough. And you mentioning the actively avoiding PvP thing, I will want to bring it up later. What about your second offering for supporting Trophy's horror
So
themes?
doing a little segue into what would normally be a combat, although again, for a second time on this podcast, for me it is not labeled as the combat section. I will discuss a very fun fact. Monsters just kill you. In Trophy,
Yeah.
you don't fight monsters, monsters fight you. If you try to fight a monster to incapacitate or in some way kill it, you die. There is no other option. You may try to fight past them and hope you succeed on your roll. That is very different than trying to incapacitate a monster. These things are immortal and guaranteed to bring you an end.
Yes, it states, you must hide, escape, or use rituals. You aren't fighting these. But you can fight folk, which are the
Yes.
non-monster enemies.
Wonder where Wounded Bear lies on the folk to monster scale.
I'd probably put it as a folk. Yeah, I'd probably just put in the folk category, as it's a wounded bear and not a maybe healthy bear or mold covered undead bear.
No, yeah. Well then, in that case, do you want to move on to the main mechanic?
Yeah. Why don't we move on?
So, as I said before, monsters just kill you. So combat is not really a huge feature in Trophy. Not to say that it doesn't come up, because again, you can kill normal people, but you're not going to be fighting monsters. This is not a monster fighting game. And then
No.
I went into a bit more detail on Devil's Bargains here, but we've kind of covered that. Players and GMs can offer Devil's Bargains anytime someone makes a risk roll. It's also worth noting that anyone who would be affected by the Devil's Bargain, not just the player taking it, can veto aspects of the entire bargain.
Yep.
Once again, bringing up the fact that Trophy says, look, no fucking each other over without your consent, which I like and appreciate.
Yeah, this is a whole like, hey everyone, let's just come up with some weird people, and how can we screw these people over? And you're just passing the torch around, going, oh, what about this? Oh, what about that? What about that's kind of the outside, not in the game vibe I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like it. But as you were saying,
anyone can do a help action, rolling their own light die and allowing you to, one light die, I should specify. And then allowing you to count it in your own roll. But if it is equal to a dark die you rolled, the helper will take 1 ruin. Helpers can only take 1 ruin though, so if you re-roll and they would mark a second ruin, they are in the clear. It's also possible for multiple people to help, and anyone who takes a ruin also suffers a condition.
And for the fact that more than one person can help, giving the player that's rolling extra die, and that player can re-roll as many times as they want until the dark die is the highest die. Players, it's a horror game, but you're not just immediately dying the first bad roll. Like that won't occur until you know your ruin score is high enough that could occur. Or of course, if you just fight a monster, but that's very clear to the players.
Mm-hmm.
So at the start, you'll have a lot of opportunities to get the outcome that you want, provided you sacrifice adding more dark die, devil's bargains, or getting your other party members to expose themselves to whatever complication you're trying to avoid.
Yep, so helping, a thing you can do. How long will you want to? How much do you really trust your allies to help them, to risk yourself?
Well, since we're talking about helping, why don't we talk about the contest role?
Yes, that is actually up next for me too. I'm glad that we have these in a similar order.
So with Trophy, there are 5 roles. The main one, the risk role. We talked about the help role. We talked about the reduction role. The other one, the 4th one, the contest role. This is the PvP role. As simple as that. Anytime your party members are competing for something, it could be, you are actually fighting. You're trying to race to get something first, the shiny treasure first or the like. This is where a contest role can come into effect. To start a contest, first, all parties must agree what is at stake. Then each player gathers their dice and you form your pool. If you're skilled, add some light die. If the contest is deadly or dangerous, add a dark die. And then take as many more dark die as you want that you are willing to risk. Count all sixes. Whoever has the most sixes wins. In the case of a tie, count all fives. In the case of a tie, keep going down and down. For each dark die that is a 1, for each dark die that is a 1, mark 1 ruin. So therefore, maybe you don't want to just take as many dice as you want, because you could rack up ruin immediately with a contest roll, meaning potentially you could immediately go from 1 ruin to 6 and then be gone. That's the contest roll.
Yep. Well then, the last roll is, I guess, should we call it a stress roll?
It's called the ruin roll. But
yeah. Whenever you see something disturbing, roll a dark die. If it is higher than your current ruin, mark 1 ruin and take a condition. At this point, I think there's one thing that we have neglected to mention about ruin. Ruin is on a scale of 1 to 6. You start with 1 ruin no matter what. At no point can you reduce past your starting ruin. However, at character creation, you have the opportunity to take 3 rituals called, that's what they call spells. And when you do, you take 1 ruin for each ritual you take. So you could potentially start the game off with 4 ruin, at which you cannot go below under any circumstance. So when it comes to that reduction roll, you might only get to make 1.
Indeed. I think you were going to mention something about ruin and conditions.
Yes. Well, the other thing about ruin is when it comes to conditions. Conditions are changes that occur to you whenever you suffer ruin. Your change is not always mechanical, but always noticeable. They mostly tend to be tied to the specific incursion you're doing based on the theme. For instance, an incursion based on mold and fungus might have you breathing visible spores every time you exhale and the like. You'll notice every time you take ruin, you take a condition. A condition is the forest, which, by the way, should be in big quotes there, because it can be, a cathedral. The forest is a more general term for nebulous evil. But the forest changing you, making you become more like it and less like you. You won't get out okay.
And as you read this book, you'll see the same language here, where mark 1 ruin, then work with the GM to define a condition describing how the forest changes you.
Mm-hmm.
You will always see, then work with the GM. So a lot of the time, or most of the time, it should be up to the players to be like, oh yeah, I know what's happening with my character. And especially if you have other conditions, it does make mention, maybe your new conditions are a worsening effect of an older condition, or they could be separate things. That it really does empower the players to really describe the poor decline of their player character.
Mm-hmm. And well, I suppose the last thing, which you did touch on briefly, is losing yourself. You don't always die, but sometimes you do. It's up to you, really. Whenever you've marked your 6th and final ruin, you have 2 choices. The first is to just die. You do 1 final act for your team. Everyone takes a moment to appreciate what you've done, and you die. This is, after all, a moment of importance in your story. How you perish is almost more important than how you lived up till that point. The second option, more fun in my opinion, is that you run off into the forest and turn into something in its service. You work with the GM to define what kind of a terror you are, and you become a persistent threat to hunt your fellow team. You do not get control of your character, however, you are allowed to make suggestions for what torment to give to the players now that you are no longer a character in a direct capacity to affect them. Some degree of veto is still allowed, but after all, these are consequences that would only happen if they failed in the first place.
Yes, at this point, the book calls out the co-GMing concept where once you've lost yourself, you kind of sit on their side of the table helping describe the terrors of the world. And, this can be worked out with the group, but they could be to a lesser extent and more just adding in what their monster would potentially be affecting, and less so what the GM is providing with different temptations and the like. Yeah, it's a really neat concept, still providing an option for that player to do something if they potentially died early on as well.
Mm-hmm. Keeps them invested in the game.
Yes. Should we talk about rings here?
You know what? Yeah, let's dive a little bit into the way the GM stuff works. Before we even get into rings, there's something very interesting about Trophy in that it has an estimated amount of time that the game will take based on the number of players, of all things. The number of players in your game, that being non-GM entities that are participating, so probably not your cat, but maybe an unusually intelligent crow. 1 hour per player, +1 for, I suppose, you. This game does not want you to rush it. Take your time. You should probably stick to 2 to 3 hour sessions just to make sure that, everyone's comfortable. This game can be kind of intense. So stretch it out as long as you need. Make sure that you give this game the time it needs to have the effect it wants.
Yeah, and it definitely calls out. This game is generally better with smaller groups because you are each going to be taking your time to describe your descent of your player character and during the character death moments and the like. So, yes, if you are having larger groups, that's where that calculation comes from. For everyone that is playing, that's an hour. So, it states about 2 to 3 players is ideal for a single session of about 3 to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and a game involving 2 players is apparently incredibly intense because you have fewer and fewer places to turn as the forest keeps getting more powerful around you. I will say,
Yes.
the game doesn't say that you can't have 4, 5, 6 players. It simply says that 2 to 3 is the optimal group size. That it won't, heavily adjust the balance or anything, just the amount of time that the incursion will take.
And I think it is a nice way to just call out, hey, games do take longer when you have more people, especially if you are trying to make sure they get enough play time. Since it's technically just allocating how much playtime each player gets, kind of, in a way. So I do appreciate that it calls this out, especially for people that aren't new to tabletop. This is a good guideline, and there are a lot of good guidelines here for players and game masters.
Speaking of guidelines, why don't you tell them about the rings, son?
So, rings. This is how Trophy mechanizes and describes the descent into madness and losing yourself. These are the gates and the shifts of each of the incursions. Each ring is going to provide a different theme or a different concept and reveal different terrors and different temptations. Terrors are going to be, the complications and the things that you'll have to face and the monsters and the like. But also not just physical, but conceptual. And temptations are the things that are pulling the players further down into the forest. With the rings, there are 5 rings to Trophy. Trophy provides a great guideline for how these rings work. Ring 1. Where are my notes? There it is. Ring 1 is the setup to the incursion. The terrors in here are supposed to make the treasure hunters feel confident. There should be like clear signs of terror's lethality, but the treasure hunters should be able to overcome them with relative ease. A wounded bear or a large mundane predator, a band of rival treasure hunters, guards or the like. Temptations in Ring 1 are ephemeral. These are rumors, whispers, glimmers of hope. They connect to the broad promises of wealth and fame that they're here for. This is, with your incursions, this is the ring that is going to be most run based on the outline in the incursion, because this is a very collaborative and free-form game. As you go deeper in the incursion, there is a lot of chances that you'll slowly divert off the incursion, but they do provide guidelines of keeping it at least thematically tied together. Ring 2 is in more typical TTRPG senses. This is your travel phase, you could call it. You are facing environmental terrors, making travel difficult. People are separating from each other. Torrential rain and mudslides. The temptations here is evidence, overwhelming evidence. They tell the treasure hunters, you're on the right track. Temple ruins, a rough stone pathway, ancient and weather-beaten statues. Ring 3. This is, in simple terms, the downtime and backstory heavy ring. This is where your treasure hunters have made camp, have gotten a time to take a break. And during that break, the terrors that come up is suspicion. The treasure hunters are probably going to start questioning the motives of their companions, dreams of impending betrayal, items being discovered in another person's pack, the realization that you've been walking around in circles. This is where the group, if they weren't already with previous roles, are going to start seeing the cracks. The temptations are personal, evoking the treasure hunter's drives, which are things that you're here for in the forest. Examples including a reminder of your drive. Oh, you're here to clear your family's name. Push on. Food or songs from home. This is a way for the players to really flesh out their characters before they die. It provides here in Ring 3 a nice way of seeing how long you should be running your incursions. If you're playing a single 3-hour session, aim to wrap up Ring 3 near the 2-hour mark. I really like that. It provides a nice point of reference. Okay, this is about kind of halfway type of situation. Ring 4 is the monstrous ring, where you are now definitely facing monsters escaping from certain death and the like. The terrors are your monsters. A mass of undefined flesh covered in hungry mouths. Shadowy claws that are visible only in your periphery. Temptations. These are things that should make the treasure hunters desperate. The bounty is right there, just out of reach. All the treasure hunters need to do is push a little bit further. You see the library through the crack in the ruins, but you have to squeeze through it. You can't get through it any other way. This is the beginning of the end, where, as it states here, every choice is going to be a difficult one. Make it a difficult one. And a player character here will probably die. I think it might state will die. But if they're facing monsters here, they may probably die. Ring 5 is the inevitable party collapse. The terrors here are psychological. They exist to pit the characters against one another, make them relent to their eventual fate. These are monstrous promises in exchange for attacking your fellow treasure hunters. Isolation, abandonment, doppelgangers. The temptation is always possessions of the other treasure hunters or things that they are perceived to be in possession of. If there is something one treasure hunter desperately wants, it must fall into the hands of another. And then the unofficial 6th ring is the epilogue. It's not part of the official structure, but this is a way to personalize the delve and allow each of the players to describe how their player characters have changed for those that survived. What do they do in their months and years now leaving the forest? And for those that have died, if they're a monster now, what do they do in the forest and what foul tasks befall on other treasure hunters? And maybe how's their loss felt back at home? Their loved ones, the ones they went into this forest for. And that's the structure of an incursion and what you'll be doing in Trophy Dark.
Rings are great. I like them a lot.
Yes.
I have more to
Very
say
good.
on that, but I'll be saving that for my standouts section.
Yep. Beyond that is the meat of the structure of Trophy Dark. You've got the 5 roles, and then this is how your player characters will slowly go through the game. Do you have anything else to add to technically combat, technically, just the core of the game?
Not in this section. I mean, the mechanics-wise, Trophy Dark does briefly go into potentially extending the game to a campaign. However, that is more the domain of Trophy Gold, so I personally chose not to take notes on that particular section.
Yeah. No, it provides a little bit more on like, hey, it does say in the rings structure, feel free to, you don't have to rush this. And if you do want to make, your session a 2-shot, feel free to make the downtime backstory kind of ring 3, a little longer. Or actually, that and or ring 2, where you're doing the travel, allowing you to expand upon that travel and exploration type of phase. But yeah, there's more like campaign long-term play with Trophy Gold. Okay, well, with that, why don't we just go over to the standout section? Besides the things that we've like really talked about, anything else? Or is there anything you want to go into more detail with?
There are a number of things that I could go into. I have actually quite the list for this game. However, first off, this game does have a page. I don't know the number. I didn't write it down, unfortunately, where it references a number of touchstones, films, video games, literature that helped inspire Trophy Dark. One name on the list stood out to me. 1974 film by the name of The Wicker Man. The Wicker Man is my favorite childhood classic I've never seen. It used to be that on fairly regular occasion, my father and several friends would get together and regularly view, not like, once a week or anything, but probably once or twice a year, would watch The Wicker Man. It was too scary for young baby me, but the more I learned about this movie over the years and the more I heard about what it's about and like the context of the era it was made, the more I find this film hilarious, despite it supposedly being a horror film, because it is basically a part of the, depending on who you ask, this film could be stated to be a part of the Christian moral majority attempting to slander the new rise of the Wiccan and pagan movement, and it's not super well made, and even more poorly researched. So it's kind of fucking hilarious as a result.
I see. That is page 22 for those wondering. It's part of
Yes.
the running the game section for Game Masters. It's the before you start, where it's like, yeah, here's a bunch of stuff that could be good, useful inspiration and the like.
And you should check out the rest of the list too. It's just that I'm pre-programmed upon seeing anything referencing the Wicker Man to point and be like, ha! The fucking Wicker Man.
I see. Well, for others out there, you've got some more, notable classics like the Blair Witch Project. You have more modern ones like Midsummer and the Witch, the Witch, and even Dark Souls is on here, which I can see why you would put it on there for kind of like an isolation a type of slowly losing yourself and becoming a husk. So yeah, a mix of stuff on there: films, novels, and a couple podcasts. One podcast, but still. You mentioned safety tools. That was kind of in my standout section, actually. But yeah, just in general, just the clear care put into making sure, hey, this is a horror game, but don't be a dick. You should all be working together to make a very fun horror experience and not an uncomfortable situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important.
Um, for me, other standouts, uh, it's hard to put a standout when like the things that I've listed, I just really like. But the rings itself and how the rings are structured, I really appreciate that. There's some very nice, clear cut guidelines for a very improvisation, yeah, improv heavy game.
It is, yeah. Very like step by step about like, okay, after this many, like, you've done this encounter, here's what you should be focusing on, and here's what should be happening. Here's how you should tempt and threaten your players to make them come deeper, keep them intrigued until they've realized all too late that the very trophy they sought was going to make trophies out of them.
Mm. Another thing, a nice guideline is the game master principles. It's got some nice, just address the players as treasure hunters. It's not Jeff. What would your player character do? It's no. What is your player character's name? And now just refer to them to that. Put them in the mind space of the thing. I think this one should have been the first one, but address the players as co-storytellers. This game thrives on collaboration. It thrives on player characters' input.
Yes.
If your friend Hannah hasn't been part of the action for a while, during a risk roll, you can say, Hannah, what do you think might go wrong here? This helps the player know that they should be thinking outside the context of their own character knowledge in that moment, and instead should be thinking about the context of the overall story. These players are helping shape this story, and all your players should be on board with that.
I included GM principles as well, although I included some slightly different aspects of it. Things like
yeah.
give them early victories and hope, only to take it away later. Use every detail. If a player makes up a cool story about something that might be a threat, wait on it. Let them forget about it. Then use it. And be poetic about your descriptions of the world. It's alive, and it hates you. Make sure to bring that out. Really good advice for running any horror game, really.
And then the last one that I think is nice that they put at the end of this single page of Game Master Principles, return to the theme. Incursions are built around a theme, generally a one-word theme, but sometimes a smaller sentence. And a rewarding session is one that brings the theme to life. If you go afield, because of its very free-form kind of nature, you can always use the incursions moments and conditions to draw attention back to the theme. A lot of incursions have moments and conditions that are specifically created for the incursion. So, a mossy forest. I'll just go to one. A mossy forest conditions. Colors wash out and everything has a patina of dull grey. Anything already green looks verdant, almost glowing. These are just random roll tables that you can look upon to get inspiration for. But also, if your players somehow make a left and now you're in the mountains and the like, you can go back to these conditions or these moments, which are kind of like little minor scenes, flavor text and the like, that can bring it back to that mossy feel. I really appreciate guidance on a freeform game. What about you? Anything else?
Uh, yeah, the fact that this game comes with not one, but like, what, 8 to 12 adventures? Like, we're covering 40 pages of book. I said that earlier, roughly.
Yeah.
The rest of that is all incursions that you can read about and run for your players. You're buying this book for $15 and it is just straight up giving you, depending on how many friends you have, like 8 to like 24. If you have 6 friends and you're
I,
bringing them through in groups of 2, you could just keep rerunning that stuff and have a great time with it.
I just checked 22 listed incursions in this book.
Oh my god. Yeah, so that's a lot. And that's before you get any of the other books that come with it. Trophy Loom is just incursions.
Yeah, the trophy has 3 separate books. There's Trophy Dark, which you can just classify as the one-shot game. There's Trophy Gold, which is campaigns and how to run a long-term trophy game. And Loom is world, like for those that want a more written down foundation for a world, especially useful for Trophy Gold. But also, yeah, more incursions.
But yeah, and then one more thing I have. You mentioned them briefly, but didn't explain what they are. Moments. Now I realize
Yes.
that that doesn't sound like something we should have to explain, but in the specific context of Dark, or of Trophy Dark, a moment is a descriptive scene that reinforces the theme. If the theme is water, a moment is like pools of water filling in the player's footsteps as they walk along. It is a thing meant to bring focus to the world and the theme, and as well as the horror and unnatural nature of what's happening. And moments are great.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. And moments actually provide a mechanical use because for those that may be wondering, it's like, okay, rings and the like, how do we get between the rings? Provides guidelines with that. To get to another ring, to the next ring, this one's a little vague, it says, but the players must encounter at least one terror and one temptation before they can immediately move to the next ring. And if you're having troubles of trying to get them to the next ring, you can use a moment to kind of infer the transition to the next ring, and a nice way to signpost that as well with some more flavor.
But
And each incursion
yes.
provides moments at the bottom of each page that you for each of the rings, so you can clearly just look at the bottom of the page and go, okay, I'll just use that moment now. Now onto the next ring.
Yeah, moments are amazing. They're not only
Yeah.
transitions, they are sudden injections of theme and atmosphere. That was the word.
Yeah.
But
And I guess
oh,
a little bit on the moments as well. I don't think I wrote it down, but I do remember, especially it was brought up in the for level ring 3 when it's time for you to have a campfire type of situation. The book tells you you're not, when you get to the end of the ring, you don't just tell players, so what are you guys doing now? It's like, well, of course they're going further into the ring. Use a moment to transition over, and specifically it calls out ring 3. It's like you don't just say, oh, you've just done a lot of traveling and got through all that rain. Are you guys tired? You probably should camp. No, it clearly just states, you just set up the next scene where they're now resting. I really like this guideline. It provides at least the book's way of how scenes would be tied together. You don't have to naturally and honestly, a lot of times, slowly and dryly move between scenes. You can just cut to the next point.
well then with
Yeah, I
that.
just wanted to mention that.
Oh no, I mean that's good. You're right. Moments are great for cutting to the next ring. You don't have to let your. Sorry, a joke came to my head. You don't have to let your players fumble to hypothetically go deeper. They are always traveling deeper. Rings are an abstract concept of how you treat them as they go deeper. What deeper actually is, quote unquote, is more of an abstraction rather than 50 feet in, they experience these threats and these temptations. It's like, no, no, no. At the start, already on their way in, they experience Ring 1. After they get a couple of things in Ring 1, showing that they're kind of in the right place to lure them deeper, you show them traveling in and how more intense it gets. They make camp to get ready for the final push. And then they are running from the monsters, the true horror revealed, and then, with what few survivors remain, their prize claimed, they turn on each other like a pack of fucking wolves.
And kind of, maybe this wasn't the intention, but this is what I'm inferring. With the use of the safety tool script change, with the remote control pause, play, skip kind of functions, it kind of feels like almost like a movie, a collaborative movie you're constructing, with you just hard cutting when needed.
Anyways, GMs of Trophy should be called the Ringmaster.
I do like that. Yeah.
Ugh. But no, you're right. It does. It definitely does feel. Of course, the Blair Witch Project is a fucking is a bit of a touchstone for this. It's a collaborative horror film that you're all making together with Tabletop.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, that's a great mention there.
That said, criticisms.
Go ahead.
Do you have any? I'm curious.
Nothing that really stood out to me. Like you mentioned before we actually started recording, the how do we transition from the next thing? There was a little bit of vagary there.
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to see if it is still there.
Oh no, I know what I said
Go ahead.
specifically. So the game talks about encounters. It says, 1 terror and 1 temptation. Now, obviously, you should be threatening your whole party with your terror, and you should be offering all your players temptations to make sure that they all are continuing on. But it doesn't explicitly say whether or not you should take time to focus on each player, which it feels like maybe you offer them a unique terror and temptation, or one group terror and then several temptations, especially where the game is more than happy to split the party up and throw stuff at them. And I mean, that also would kind of show why the game's recommended time frame thing is if you have to offer each player a unique terror and temptation. But it doesn't explicitly state. It just says after you've done one of those two, or both of those, one of each, move on to the next ring. And it's like, one of each for every player? One of each for the group? One for one person, and then suddenly, or, one of each for one person, and then suddenly we're running into the next ring? One for one guy, another for a different person, and then we run into the next ring? It doesn't quite specify.
I think based on the fact that it's an improvisational game, and it's very simple guidelines, I think they wanted you to at least do just one of each instance at least. And based on what the players are doing and how you're feeling, maybe you want to emphasize something else before you go into the next ring. Sure. But yeah, it doesn't state much about, how many should you fit in here before you stick too long within one ring. But it does state, if you want to do some kind of working out, if it says, if you're playing roughly a 3-hour session, finish ring 3 near the 2-hour mark. You can kind of go, okay, if ring 1 is kind of a setup situation, and ring 2 has been said, you could expand this one to make this incursion 2 sessions. Maybe ring 1 is about 30 minutes, 20 minutes or so. Ring 2 could be upwards of 40 to an hour, and then ring 3 is the remaining before the 2 hour mark, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but
But
again,
yeah,
part of the problem I have is that you and I are trying to talk out how the best way to handle this would be because the language used was a little bit vague.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, I don't necessarily have criticisms for Trophy. I have warnings for people who want to pick it up, just about the type of game it is, so that, you know, you don't pick it up and wind up disappointed by it. Stuff like, the game requires a lot of buy-in from players. Horror only works if you're willing to buy in to horror. A horror film only
Mm.
scares you because you're invested in what's happening, and which is why so bad it's good horror films like The Wicker Man exist, where it's just fun to laugh at if you think it's silly. Um, if you have people who aren't going to buy into the roleplay focus of this, you're going to have a hard time getting the full effect of Trophy as a game. Additionally, for some players, being asked to like say what they see, decide what consequences might come up for their allies, and any kind of like setting and game work like that is just a lot for them. I know players who actively just hate this kind of game. They just like, hey, I like that's what you're for, GM. Why do I have to do it? And that's fair for some people. Some people really just don't want to have to come up with the idea themselves, and they're there to play the game, not help create the world of it. And that's a preference thing. So you're really gonna again, it's more of a buy-in thing. Not only do you need the buy-in, you need the willingness to be cooperative in creating the story that's happening and what's happening, from threats to mistakes to tiny details of what you see, what you smell, what you hear, as you, the GM, provide moments, threats, and temptations. So high combat players, or players who just don't talk a lot, may really not get the experience of this game at all. But the thing is that's not a criticism, because on the other hand, realizing a game isn't for you is your own job as someone coming to the table.
Mm. And the fact that this, it clearly asks that the players must be aware of the storytelling, the collaborative nature of it. It's not shy about what this is, so it will be easy for potential players to understand. Oh, okay, this isn't for me.
No, yeah, it absolutely it is, but again, this is one of those things where if you're like, oh my god, a game where we're playing to have a horror experience and be destroyed, oh boy, and then you come in and you're like, I can't fight big monsters, they just insta-kill me, this game sucks. And it's like, again, I don't have, except for that slightly vague thing, I don't necessarily have criticism for this game. I actually think well, when I finished it, I thought it might be above critique altogether by its presentation, everything it did. But that one vagueness thing did kind of bother me as time went on. But no. All I have is that one thing that it requires a lot of. Oh, it also could offer some examples of what consequences are meant to be. It tells you about failing and marking ruin, but what are consequences? Like, you don't mark a ruin when you take a consequence, or at least it doesn't explicitly say that you should. So what should it be? And maybe that's in the incursion section, which I didn't read, and that's my own fault. But on the other hand, it feels like it could tell you. I mean, but again, it's trying to be open to let players decide the consequences. So making it up as you go along isn't so bad either. But again, for some players, that's a lot to have to do. For some GMs, that's a lot to have to do. Some GMs like a lot of mechanics that tell them how to go about it.
Yeah. But honestly, yeah, I'm kind of in the same vein. There isn't really anything that I dislike, really unsure of. I'm just more thinking, oh boy, how do I get to run this? How can I run this for some players? Because I really want to run this. I really want to run this. And now I need to find players that really want to play this. And will be
They
up
hang out in a
for,
fucking Chronicles of Darkness server.
yes, sure, this isn't the right section for it, but I was immediately thinking this, all these vampire players, all these, just Chronicles of Darkness, World of Darkness players, they would love Trophy.
I bet you that multiple players, all of whom are frequently in the server we operate out of, would love this game.
But no, that's definitely something that I want to play this game. But why don't we go to just free talk since we are in free talk now?
I was going to talk about theft. I mean, things that we would take from this game and use. Oh, wait, that is what we call free talk. I don't know why I labeled it. Oh, right, because trophy, and you're stealing things from a forest, so I felt like I would label it theft.
I see.
Oh, wait, no, hold on. I do have one more criticism. Something about this game
Okay.
I actually do genuinely hate.
Oh, okay.
The dark dye for this game look really good. Now, I'm immune to wanting to buy plastic math rocks because I actually genuinely fear that any kind of cool-looking dice would be improperly weighted, but these look well weighted and painted very well. So fuck you, Trophy, for being the one game to make me want to buy dice. How dare you?
And yes, for those that are playing online, if you have a way to, I can't currently check because my computer is screwing up, but I know that there is a Roll20 sheet, and I'm definitely sure that there's a Foundry sheet, and they'll easily separate the die rolls out. So you do not need physical dice to play this game.
You don't.
And you definitely do not need different colored dice. If you are playing physically, just make sure you can separate the dice so you can know which one's dark and which one's light.
Yeah, you could just have a normal die, and then instead of black or the little pips, you could just paint them red or something.
Yeah, if you've got some dice that you don't care about slightly defacing,
Altering.
yeah, but go ahead. Or maybe you've got some dice that are numbered and some that are pips, the dots.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah. Now we can go on to free talk. I just wanted to bitch about the fact that the trophy dice actually made me think for a moment that maybe I should buy some. Digital constantly. I don't need physical dice. I don't own any physical dice, and I don't plan on it. And the fact that trophy made me waver shames me.
Please go ahead, since I am having technical issues.
Oh yeah, well you have some technical issues. I guess I'll just ramble. Actually, so touching back on the heavy themes of safety tools and consent in this game, more games should do this. Some people like to be like, oh, I don't need safety tools, or, oh, safety tools aren't applicable to me and my group. You shouldn't just have to discuss these kinds of things. It's common sense. Shut up, you're wrong. Games providing these tools up front give every single person the chance to know what terms they are using and how to express themselves in these situations. If everyone knows that they can just say pause and it will be respected, which is more up to the quality of the people. But in general, it's about shared language. It's about being able to discuss and agree upon how things are going to be discussed when they come up. It is an important tool because abuse and just bad faith practices in general love for things to not be discussed because they make people slightly uncomfortable, so that their specific form of mistreatment can continue unopposed because people don't know how to talk about it. They don't have the words. They don't know who they can trust because the situation is happening and they lack an ability to discuss it in a way that is productive. So, safety tools, even if it's not a horror game, frankly, they should be listed, and I'm going to make a point of doing that in my future games and retroactively at some point once I get into a headspace where I can look at anything I've written and not just immediately just stare blankly at a screen for an hour.
Yeah, and that is the thing. Safety tools call out the concept that you should trust your players, and these are ways to set up some clear expectations. And for those out there, they go, wait, why do I need to trust my players? So, hang on, what? If you are questioning Do I really need to trust my players? Yes. Yes, you should be able to trust your players to play a collaborative role-playing game. Doesn't matter what game it is. You
Yeah.
should be able to trust the player that you're playing with.
As pro GMs with pickup groups, frequently of like groups of strangers or people who we didn't know coming to us as groups, we might be a bit more attuned to the need for this all the time because I gave like 3 game safety spiels in a week not too long ago, and it was like I hit like the same talking points every time. But overall, like it's important for anyone. You don't have to go far to find RPG horror stories. There's a Reddit for it. There's multiple YouTubers who do various forms of like green text or just reading them out, giving their thoughts on it. And sometimes it's with people. There have been stuff where someone's like, "Yeah, my friends of a long time who I feel should know better. We started playing RPGs together, and they did this stuff, and it made me feel uncomfortable." Because we didn't discuss it beforehand, because I didn't think we needed to. And it's like, well, there you go. You didn't think you needed to. You assumed, and you didn't use safety tools and discuss them beforehand as a matter of course. This could have been prevented if only they had had a session 0 and talked about the X card.
And that's the thing. Safety tools. For those that are feeling overwhelmed, kind of worried, kind of cautious at the concept of safety tools. Safety tools, you can see it as just a shared language. Are you playing a game where you just know, but you want to call it out to the whole group? Hey, everyone, just letting you know, with our game of dragons and sword slaying, we aren't going to have child harm in it because my uncle just had my cousins kind of had an issue, and I don't want to relive those experiences. It's like, yeah, no worries, that's fine. Don't want to bring up some bad trauma for you. That, using a particular safety tool, is called a line. We are not going to bring up this topic. It's like, hey guys, just let you know, I'm okay with a little bit of torture in this horror game that we're playing. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. But just so you know, I don't want to go too overboard because I have, I'll get very visual images and I don't like describing blood too much. That's all fine. So we're going to kind of fade to black or kind of skip over that a little bit. Don't go too far into it. That's a veil. These are just shared language concepts. People often have a session, or even before they start, where you're creating characters and just telling people what this campaign's going to be. That's a session 0, and that is a safety tool because, one, you are getting everyone on the same page, at least in a mechanical game sense, but also it is the stage. Even you should actually mention it beforehand, but that is definitely the stage to bring up all these safety tools and what you want to get everyone on the same page with.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm glad Trophy has provided us this platform to actually talk about safety tools a little bit.
And this will not be the only game that we touch on that will have something involving safety tools. Eventually there will be another. I know this for certain. However, it's not quite as cool as Trophy, where it actually explains them. It just says, we advise using these safety tools. Learn more at this link. Which, I mean, still helpful. Still very helpful, but not great in comparison.
But yeah, I think Trophy provides a really good way of explaining them, but also explain them throughout the game. Because, it's a horror game. Hey, just, maybe you want to do something bad to your players for your a decreasing roll, but the players can slightly shift things, type of thing. That's the players all trying to make sure they're on the same page of what they want to experience in the game, and that is tying it back to the trust and the safety within the game. So yeah,
it is.
I think it's a really good way of presenting safety tools and just trust and the like in this game.
The fact that we've talked about safety tools 3 times now, I think we've covered it thoroughly. Look forward to in a future episode just talking about safety tools and only safety tools. We probably
should
will.
actually.
No, yeah,
We
we
will. Yeah.
should and we will, but no, it won't be like next episode or anything. Don't worry.
No.
So yeah. Um. All right. Have you fixed any of your technical difficulties, or should I ramble more?
Fuck my Google Doc. It's fine. For me, I really like the structure of rings, and for more improvisational games or games where it's more theater of the mind, um, or like journey-ish games, I really like how rings provide a structure to not location or anything, but introducing the theme in a different way. So, okay, this one's, you know, uh, for the combats that you're facing in more of a sword board. It's like, yeah, no, they should be easier and the like, you know, and the temptations, they're just, you know, rumors and the like. This can be used easily for a dragon-ish game, easily. And then you're slowly getting into it, and then you should bring these things up. Going further and further for them to get further in. This is, you know, works better for a more location specific vague spaces like mega forests that have kind of a supernatural vibe to them. But I can see it being used in places that don't really shift you around much too.
Trophy even
That
actually suggests using it as a thing for like an in between session for your normal game, and then having your normal group of adventurers show up to the results of your trophy dark game.
Yes, I do like that call out. It's like, hey, it, trophy's a one shot game. Use it for all the other games that you like playing. um, and I really like when I first read Trophy. Actually, when I read Trophy now, since I've read it before, when I saw these are there's 5 core roles in the game, I was thinking, oh, that sounds like a lot, but that's all that Trophy is really in terms of what the player's doing mechanically.
Yeah.
And they're all in a similar, they're not complicated. It's always going to be roll a die, a d6 die, a light or a dark, and it's just really, besides the risk roll, where it's actually do you get a 1 to 3 or a 5 to 6 or a 6? It's always just really, is it above a ruin? Is it higher than a dark? I appreciate trying to really use the die pool to its fullest extent without going too complicated. And trying to utilize the concept of having 2 corresponding dice. I don't think that was in my to steal, but I did like that, how Trophy's not mechanically complicated for what it provides.
No, yeah, I think there might
I'm just,
be more distinct types of roll in 5e.
yeah, you got your D20 roll for a skill.
Yeah, so
You've got
there's
your
skill with
attack roll.
proficiency, attack with modifier proficiency, damage, which is just modifier but not proficiency, save, which is ability with proficiency, just ability, which is just d20 plus modifier. You
But then
have,
there's attack with proficiency if you're proficient in the weapon.
yep, yeah, no. There's definitely a lot more. There's definitely a lot more just like finicky and specific role type stuff in 5e. So if you can run 5e, you can probably run Trophy, at least in terms of purely mechanical sense.
Yeah, like you're not going to get overwhelmed by the concepts of the 5 roles, 5 different types of roles. You're going to be using the risk roll most of the time, and the GM should remember to call out the ruin or stress roll. Because I think that's going to be the one that would be used the least, potentially. And potentially the PvP roll,
Yeah.
if players are going to be more cooperative.
Definitely.
I don't really have anything else really to steal, especially since I can't look at my document.
Oh
But no, I didn't
yeah,
have anything else. Yeah.
that's unfortunate. On my end, I have a couple things. The idea of a themed incursion is so great because
Yes. Yes.
you can do a lot of interesting things with just like, oh hey, I have a theme and let's make it an incursion for trophy. Like great for just like I have a word. Let's start working on some vague bullshit to torture people. Yeah, let's go. But one of the other things you can do, an idea I had, is turn the simple one-word theme on its head a little. Add in a fake theme, a red herring. You
Interesting.
lead players into the ring in a way where it's seems to be one simple theme so that players think they know what they're handling. But as they go deeper, once they hit like the fourth and fifth ring, the true nature of the actual theme, the disguised one, the more in-depth look, if you will, reveals itself. And players realize they're already in too deep, caught in the web. I don't have any specific adventures or ideas about how I could do this. I've never even looked at a trophy incursion yet. But I could probably come up with an idea of this.
I could see that working, but I could also see it working kind of against the
Mm.
concept of
Mm-hmm.
the players narrating their things to kind of be towards that
No,
theme.
you're right. You're not wrong about that at all. But I mean, do players always know the theme of an incursion?
If I'm not, don't remember correctly, the GM like just states out front, "Hey, this is this theme, and this is." I think there's like a little bit of sentence before you just go straight into it. So
Hmm.
it like kind of states up front, so the players are on board and can lean into that.
Then in that case, I could totally see how that could backfire.
But you could just make the theme,
Multi-layered.
yeah, multi-layered. Hey, we're doing this, but actually this, and
No,
the
no,
players
no.
know, and then they can lean into that.
I've got it. The theme is deception.
Yeah.
Just absolutely fuck with your players from start to finish.
Hmm. But no, when I start running this, I will definitely want to release my own incursions. I've seen a lot of there is a nice trophy community out there,
Mm-hmm.
like on itch and the like, where there are player made incursions. So you still have a wealth of incursions beyond the official ones
You
in the
do.
books.
And then, I mean, I really like the idea of players getting to describe things other than just what their character thinks and does. Deciding the narrative of a consequence once you've mechanically explained how it works. Um, Letting them describe an area as they enter it. Just, the things that they would normally see, not any hidden things you can throw at them later. Letting them
Yeah.
suggest consequences for their actions or each other's actions. I could see this putting people at each other's throats, which works for trophy. But if you can all sit down and be like, yeah, I'm down to have people suggest a what could go wrong thing for my actions, and, agree to it together, then I think it could be a lot of fun.
Hmm. I can similar to the in vein of no, I'm going to forget the word, but the world building games out there where it's a collaborative experience as you
Mm-hmm.
build out a world or a setting or a region or the like. And how Trophy Dark says, hey, use this between your standard game where, you want to provide a little backstory to a dungeon that your heroes are going to come into. Play out the dead adventurers in Trophy. I really like the idea of you have your little town and it's surrounded by bad shit, and you are just doing constant incursions from that same town, fleshing out the bad shit around, and then you run your standard campaign game in that world that you've now fleshed out the mythos of the dangerous environment around.
Yeah. No, yeah, it has a lot of potential. But
Yeah.
for me, I mean, I do have one more thing, but we've been going for a while, and I don't know how long I'm going to talk about this. I don't know if it's going to be long or short.
Go for it. Why not?
Okay, so I made a knockoff of Trophy without having ever read it on accident.
Okay.
So it was really nice to see that idea done well by people who knew what they were doing with game design. The second game I ever, well, third game I ever wrote and worked on, second game I ever put out in any capacity for people to obtain, is not dissimilar in concept to Trophy, although thematically it is
Is this the
noticeably different.
PvP Bloodborne-ish?
Yeah. So there's
Yep.
a game I'm never gonna finish called The Breach. No, not that sci-fi one you're probably thinking of. That one came out after I put out mine. Thank you very much. But also The Breach is the very uninspired name, so it's not like I could be like, how dare you take my how dare you take my original OC, don't steal. Like, no, no.
You should have trademarked The Breach.
Yo, yeah. Pull a Blizzard and get my fucking grubby fingers all over copyrights I shouldn't have, like the word cataclysm. No. But, I made a game about people being trapped in hell and having to collect souls to get out. And the main thing is that you would adventure around trying to get more powerful, probably selling what soul you originally had in the place to get more power, as well as, you know, special unique weapons and magic items and all that stuff. But then when you had enough souls to buy your way out, you could only get a soul by killing like a truly terrifying monster that was a boss fight. And if a player died, they would just turn into a monster. And basically, there was a timer. Your team had to survive you being a monster in a timer or kill you, killing you permanently. Definitely not Trophy, and I'm never going to finish it. And there's a lot there that is just based on how I was doing game design at the time, where I didn't like it enough to finish it. That should say all that really needs to be said about that game. But if you want to see it, it's free, so you know.
I know you could do an inspired incursion where, you know,
Absolutely.
you're escaping, and, you know, the sixth ring, you know, the concept is you're trying to leave. That's what the treasure is. You're trying to escape.
Oh yeah, and The Breach
yeah.
definitely had a mechanic about murdering your fellow players to steal their souls to buy your way out faster. You know,
and,
assuming people weren't against that kind of thing.
But yeah, I can see what you mean by that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I accidentally made a knockoff of Trophy. That was fun to find out, having read this game, but it was really nice to see something that had really brought out so much more of the concept of you're fucked and you're gonna turn into a monster for having been here in the first place. Your mistake was entering.
I think this game is my... Like, I know I could never get into Vampire, just because, you know, I have a thing with vampires, but I don't think I would be able to get into World of Darkness in general.
Not after the things I've heard about it.
But I think this would be my easy, more approachable way of getting into that similar concept, maybe, or mind space.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I could probably tolerate Chronicles of, because after all, I've read Eclipse Phase, I've read some dense-ass books. But,
but yeah.
Yeah, after what I've heard about World as opposed to Chronicles, oof. I'll stick to at least Chronicles is consistent across the board. But yeah, I mean, do you have anything else?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, then, yeah, we've been going for about 90 minutes here, so I suppose we'll go ahead and send off. And with that in mind, thank you for joining us today as we looked at Trophy Dark. Join us next time for more indie tabletop discussion and design. I've been Oscar C. Tango, and joining me has been Sun Gone.
You can find me at sungone_ on Twitter, sun at Start Playing Games, and sungone on itch.io.
And you can find me at Stranded TTRPG on Twitter, Oscar C. Tango on startplaying.games, and Stranded Publishing on itch. You can find all those links in the description. And remember, don't be afraid to adventure beyond the dragon.